They live continuously on land for 6 days, laying up to 600,000 eggs in a single spawning event. And in some parts of the world, this creature is so aggressive that it even leaves the water to attack and devour pigeons. The biological profile of the African catfish accurately identifies it as a high-level ecological threat. And now, this 40-pound predator is pushing Brazil's natural ecosystem to the brink of collapse. Whether the river water is crystal clear or thick with chemical sludge, it continues to expand exponentially, disrupting the natural food chain and eliminating every species in its path. A human economic mistake has inadvertently opened the door, a series of consequences beyond our control. How severely is the South American ecosystem being devastated by a species of fish capable of breathing air directly? The landscape of the Meia Ponte River, which flows through Brazil's Goiânia region, resembles the scene of an ecological disaster. Decades ago, nestled in the shade of lush bamboo groves, this place was home to countless beautiful and biologically valuable native South American flora and fauna, such as piau fish, pintado catfish, and carênia fish. Local fishermen depend on this diversity for survival, but today, when casting their lines into the murky waters, the only thing strong enough to break even the toughest lines is one thing: African catfish. The disappearance of native species does not happen naturally. That is the result of systematic elimination. The African catfish, scientifically known as Clarius garapinos, has evolved to become an absolutely dominant species. It functions as a massive consuming machine at the bottom of the river, with a mouth cavity capable of expanding to its maximum size. It doesn't waste time biting or tearing. A single lunge from an adult creates such a powerful suction force that it can swallow an entire native fish in an instant. This species' predatory abilities transcend the limits of its aquatic environment. Analysis of the stomach contents of African catfish in Brazil has revealed a shocking truth. They don't just eat fish. Their diet includes shrimp, crabs, small reptiles, the eggs of other aquatic species, and even birds. Waterfowl, such as herons, ducks, and water hens, when near the shore, are often dragged down to the bottom by their enormous jaws. The arrival of the African catfish created a nutrient cascade effect, a collapse that began at the top of the food chain in its native Africa. African catfish populations are dominated by crocodiles, pelicans, and aggressive tigerfish. But in the central Brazilian seas, they have absolutely no natural predators. This ecological gap allows African catfish to easily take a dominant position, eliminating food sources for other species, and even preying on their competitors. But how can such a giant creature survive in polluted rivers, where oxygen levels are so low that other fish die within minutes? The answer lies in a biological weapon that nature has bestowed upon its body. Most fish breathe by absorbing dissolved oxygen from the water through their gills. When water is polluted by household waste, fertilizers, or industrial chemicals, the amount of dissolved oxygen drops sharply, causing mass water deaths. But African catfish consider even the most polluted waters as paradise. It possesses a specialized biological organ called the gill-like respiratory system, a complex structure that functions much like the lungs of land animals. This organ allows it to float to the surface and breathe air directly from the atmosphere. Therefore, even if the oxygen concentration in the water drops to zero, this will not cause any problems for it. Furthermore, scientists have noted that this species can tolerate toxic levels of ammonia and pH that no other species in South America can withstand. When polluted rivers sweep away native fish species, African catfish will clean up the carcasses, take over the space, and turn the toxic water source into their own kingdom. Their resilience reaches its most impressive level when they are taken out of the water. A real-world experiment conducted by local fishermen in Brazil has shown results that defy all biological laws. After being thrown onto dry land, an African catfish survived for 6 consecutive days. Ultimately, it collapsed from exhaustion and severe dehydration, not from suffocation. Its self-defense mechanism was activated perfectly. When the fish senses that the aquatic environment has disappeared, its body immediately secretes a layer of extremely thick and viscous mucus, covering its entire outer skin. This armor acts as a barrier, preventing water from evaporating from inside the body. What's even more terrifying is that it's not just lying there waiting to die. Unlike typical fish that thrash about fruitlessly on land, African catfish use their incredibly strong pectoral fins to propel their bodies forward. It moves vigorously across cracked ground, traversing fields and wading through mud at night in search of waterholes or new river and lagoon systems. The possibility of walking on land is a nightmare for environmental managers. You can't isolate this species by building dams or draining lakes, because it will simply climb ashore and move to a different ecosystem. With such survival and disaster resilience, how did a species native to Africa manage to cross the Atlantic and invade South America? It is at this point that we must confront the brutal interference of humankind. This invasion was a man-made catastrophe, stemming from humanity's greed and ignorance. Decades ago, the global aquaculture industry obsessively pursued the most profitable fish species. They needed a fast-growing, meaty fish that could eat anything, had low breeding costs, and possessed excellent disease resistance. African catfish has emerged as an ideal economic solution. They are imported in large quantities into Brazil to supply commercial farms and fishing systems that can trap a perfect survival machine in net cages and artificial ponds, but nature always finds a way to break through all barriers. During heavy rains and storms, floodwaters rise, breach dikes, and inundate fish farms. Thousands of African catfish have escaped the muddy waters and swam straight into Brazil's pristine, natural river systems. Even more seriously, when aquaculture operations ceased, they released these fish directly into natural rivers. Releasing African catfish into the South American ecosystem is like injecting an extremely dangerous agent into a body that has no antibodies. Native species never evolved to cope with enemies possessing that level of strength, speed, and hunting strategy. Human intervention has permanently distorted the river's evolutionary trajectory. And upon returning to its natural environment, this monster began to activate another large-scale threat, its relentless reproductive machine. Along the river lies a dam from an old hydroelectric power plant, long abandoned due to natural biological processes. Each year, native fish species need to swim upstream, migrating to shallow, safe waters to breed. However, the massive concrete block of the dam completely blocked this road. Millions of native fish species have been trapped in the dammed waters just below the dam. It was at this time that the African catfish appeared. Ironically, that location became an ideal hunting ground and a perfect breeding ground for the invasive species. While South American fish species are trapped and panicking, African catfish not only prey on adult fish but also completely devastate spawning grounds. At the same time, it also begins its own reproductive process. Modern studies indicate that a mature female fish can lay up to 600,000 eggs per kilogram of body weight. Let's do a simple calculation. A 10 kilograms female hidden at the bottom of the Maya Ponte River can lay more than 600,000 eggs in just one breeding season. The hatching speed is also astonishing. The eggs hatch into larvae within 24 to 36 hours, depending on the water temperature. From birth, they possess a predatory instinct, grow extremely quickly, and can begin reproducing in less than a year. This population of juvenile fish is growing at an alarming rate, creating an exponential biological explosion. They wipe out the entire biomass of the river and push the native ecosystem to the brink of complete depletion. Unlike the pirarucu or the small caiman, native predators that depend on stable aquatic environments, the African catfish possesses the ultimate survival ability, the capacity to withstand the harshest dry seasons of the tropical rainforest. Faced with such a dangerous invasive species, authorities and the environmental science community need to establish strict regulations. An unofficial but extremely strict guideline has been issued to all fishermen. Under no circumstances should the catch and release policy be applied to African catfish. The message is very clear. When your fishing rod pulls this animal out of the water, never release it back into the river. Let's completely remove it from the ecosystem and take drastic measures to ensure it cannot continue to thrive. Furthermore, using this species for food poses serious health risks. African catfish living in rivers polluted by industrial waste and urban garbage can accumulate extremely high levels of heavy metals in their flesh. They feed on human waste, and humans cannot eat them in return. Complete eradication of this species has now become a purely ecological act. The invasion of African catfish in Brazil is clear evidence of human arrogance. For short-term economic gain, we are destroying the defenses that Mother Nature has built over millions of years. Did you know that invasive species are one of the biggest threats to global biodiversity today, contributing to more than 50% of all recorded extinctions? Animals like the Canada goose pollute grasslands. Wild turkeys cause traffic problems, and wild boars destroy crops and spread disease. Comment Hasson explores how farmers and experts are implementing control measures, from traps and cages to modern technologies, to protect ecosystems and crops. In North America, the wild turkey population is estimated to exceed 6 million. They not only live in dense forests, but also invade residential areas, parks, and even gardens, causing numerous problems. These large birds leave droppings everywhere, degrading the landscape and potentially carrying diseases. When moving in flocks, they often cross roads unexpectedly, posing a danger to vehicles. Most notably, the males exhibit aggressive behavior during mating season. And when they see their own reflection in a window or on a car, they mistake it for a rival and begin pecking relentlessly, sometimes causing significant damage. To control population growth and mitigate its negative impacts, many states allow hunting during specific seasons. However, hunting wild turkeys is no easy task. These birds possess keen eyesight, capable of detecting even the smallest movements, and extremely sensitive hearing. Hunters must utilize the terrain, decipher tracks, distinguish different sounds, and employ calling techniques to attract them.
There you go, brother.
Spring and autumn are the two main seasons when turkey hunting is permitted, with the aim of regulating the population and maintaining the balance of the ecosystem. Spring often coincides with the breeding season of wild turkeys, when roosters readily respond to calls mimicking hen calls. However, in the fall, they tend to congregate in large flocks, making them easier for hunters to approach. To attract their attention, hunters often emit characteristic calls every 15 to 20 minutes, combined with calls mimicking real turkeys to deceive their senses. Some turkeys prefer to hide behind a large tree or among bushes, which provides better camouflage and a wider field of vision. The time between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m. is considered ideal, as during this time turkeys are actively foraging and less vigilant than in the early morning.
That a baby?
Regarding weapons, both hunting rifles and bows and arrows are used. Experienced hunters usually aim for the neck or legs rather than the constantly moving head. If you enjoy hunting expeditions in the wild, please leave a like.
Good job, good job.
The hunt is over, but the fun begins. What do you think about the butchering, cleaning, and processing starting right there? Let me know in the comments below. With its rich flavor, firm, juicy meat, and naturally dark color, wild turkey is often valued more highly than farm-raised turkey. Next, let's journey to the vast prairies of Minnesota. Every morning as the sun rises, the landscape appears not only peaceful, but also a constant struggle, not against the weather, but against nature itself. Among them are the starling and the Canada goose, two species that have caused serious impacts on agriculture and the environment throughout North America. Starlings eat seeds and crops and drive native birds away from their nests, causing hundreds of millions of dollars in damage each year. Meanwhile, Canadian geese, with their rapid reproduction rate and gregarious nature, have turned golf courses, parks, and farmland into massive dumping grounds, causing millions of dollars in damage. In this context, modern technology has become a crucial tool in the struggle for control. Initially, many farms opted for direct solutions, using specially licensed hunting rifles or installing specialized traps like Starlyside to quickly reduce the population. Some reports noted effective results, with reductions of up to 50% in certain areas. There were even instances of organized hunting on rainy nights, where adult geese were killed to protect corn crops. However, these practices were highly controversial. Many argued that these deadly methods were cruel and inhumane. Then they even took the video of the person being abandoned. Conversely, non-lethal methods focus on sustainability. These include using scarecrows, emitting scarecrow sounds, or applying vegetable oil to the eggs to prevent hatching without harming the mother. In Minnesota, a group of farmers tested a combination of technologies. They used drones to track the flight paths of starlings and Canadian geese, then shone lasers over a 4-hectare plot of land at night. The results showed that the flocks of birds were driven away without any harm. In your opinion, where is the reasonable line between protecting crops and maintaining the natural balance? Leave a comment and share your thoughts on this issue. Look at that, the lush green cornfields stretching to the horizon lead many to believe that farmers only have to worry about droughts or market fluctuations. But in reality, a far more insidious, persistent, and severe threat lurks in the shadows: invasive wildlife. A peaceful night can turn into a nightmare. A single herd of wild boars is enough to devastate entire hectares of crops in just a few hours. From the vast prairies of Texas to the fertile valleys of Latin America, a struggle for survival, rural economics, and the balance of nature collide head-on on the same stage. In the United States, particularly in Texas, wild boars have become a real national threat, with over 8 million breeding at an alarming rate and having no natural predators. Natural populations that control their numbers are absolutely essential. These animals cause economic damage of over $5 billion annually. Imagine this. Just a herd of a few dozen wild boars can destroy up to 20 hectares of crops in a matter of hours, from corn and soybeans to fruits and vegetables. They leave nothing intact, but not only do they devastate crops, they also destroy irrigation systems and severely disrupt the soil, causing degradation and seriously impacting long-term agricultural productivity. Furthermore, they carry dangerous pathogens. Their droppings can contain coliform bacteria, which can affect both livestock and humans. Most worryingly, they are replacing native species, competing for food resources, and causing a decline in local biodiversity. Faced with this uncontrolled invasion, the ecological balance is threatened, and farmers are forced to act. In Texas, the war against wild boars engulfs entire towns. Each year, more than 40,000 licensed hunters participate in aerial hunting using helicopters. This is one of the most effective ways to eradicate entire herds of these invasive animals. Aerial hunting now not only helps control wild boars, but has also opened up a thriving industry. If you'd like to try a wild boar hunt by helicopter, comment below and watch the next video. Many situations can be both amusing and alarming when humans unintentionally provoke wild boars, leading to unpredictable attacks. In some instances, daring wild boars even charge into people's homes, causing panic among residents. The North American wild boar, also known as feral hog or wild pig, is a common species of wildlife in North America. They have a large physique, sharp snouts, and are a natural predatory species. The number of offspring in each litter can vary from 3 to 8. This may depend on factors such as environmental conditions and food resources. Foxes are not only common predators but also a serious threat to agriculture, especially sheep and poultry farming. Foxes typically carry out attacks at night when the poultry is quiet and resting. Each night, they can kill numerous poultry, causing significant economic and psychological losses for farmers. Areas near forests or wild areas are often hotspots, where foxes frequently appear to carry out these attacks. They primarily target farms as prey and search for food. Foxes are omnivores with the ability to choose between meat, fruits, and vegetables. The diversity in their diet poses a significant challenge in controlling and preventing their excessive population growth. They have the capability to hunt a variety of prey, from mice and rabbits to various bird species, adding complexity to their management. Currently, the threat from foxes in Australia is becoming a serious issue. In Australian agriculture, jumping traps are not only effective but also simple and easy to use, allowing multiple mistakes to be reused to implement the strategy. Farmers need to prepare carefully with tools such as traps, bait, and rope. Traps come in different types depending on the size and weight of the fox. The trap setting process is simple but requires caution and strategy. Farmers need to choose trap locations that maximize the chance of catching foxes, usually on their regular routes or near areas with abundant food. If you find this method perfect, leave number 1 below in the comments. By setting traps approximately 2 to 3 times per week, Australian farmers have achieved significant results in controlling the fox population. According to a government study in Australia, the fox population has decreased by around 30% over the past 5 years, primarily due to the implementation of trap and release methods. However, this process also requires attention and adherence to specific principles during trapping. Safety is always a top priority. Traps need to be placed in secure locations, out of reach of children and pets. Learn a bit about the fox's reproductive process. Foxes have the ability to reproduce throughout the year, but the peak usually occurs in spring and summer. A fox litter typically consists of 4 to 6 cubs. However, this number can vary depending on environmental conditions and food resources. The gestation period for foxes lasts about 52 to 53 days. With such a short gestation period, the fox population can still increase significantly despite control measures. There are a total of 4 fox species, among which the red fox, vulpes, has a wide distribution in the northern hemisphere, ranging from North America, Europe, and Asia to North Africa. The red fox is often distinguished by its reddish-brown fur, large ears, and long tail. The next species is the gray fox, Urocyon cinereoargenteus, notable for its silver-gray fur, and its tail often has a characteristic black part. Following that is the Arctic fox, Alopex lagopus, and finally, the kit fox, Vulpes lagopus, known for its pristine white fur resembling snow. A common trait among them is their flexible adaptation to diverse habitats and their cunning hunting abilities. The red fox is the most common species, and it is widely distributed across various regions, including environments ranging from forests to grasslands and urban areas. Red foxes exhibit a flexible adaptation to different habitats, making them easily spotted roaming and foraging in suburban areas. They have an efficient reproductive period, with the ability to reproduce rapidly and often yielding a relatively large number of cubs per litter. This contributes to a significant population increase, up to 10% more compared to other species. One cannot overlook the Urocyon cinereoargenteus, a unique fox species with distinctive fur, blending two elegant tones. Particularly noteworthy is its remarkable ability to skillfully climb trees, resembling monkeys. This special flexibility showcases its excellent adaptation to diverse environments. Have you ever heard of the Arctic fox? The Arctic fox is a species of wild animal that inhabits the Arctic region, within the icy territories of the Arctic Circle and adjacent areas. The Arctic fox is renowned for its thick and soft fur, perfectly adapted to the cold environment. They can be white during winter to avoid prey's attention, transitioning to brown or gray in summer when the snow melts. The red fox, a formidable predator, is posing significant challenges for farmers in Australia. With its cunning hunting abilities, it accounts for up to 15% of the country's economy. Red foxes frequently invade farms, outsmart and steal other animals to meet their voracious appetite. The rapid increase in the number of red foxes is driving their feeding behavior, causing numerous losses not only economically but also ecologically. To cope with the economic downturn caused by the fox population, Australian residents have proposed implementing a hunting solution. This is not only a completely legal measure but also requires special preparation from participants, as they need a new license to engage in hunting activities. The use of hunting dogs is a crucial part of this hunting strategy. Equipped with keen noses, they make it easy to pinpoint the fox's location. Once the target is located, the hunting process becomes simpler than ever, with the fox being chased out, and just a well-aimed shot is needed to take them down. I have a question. What happens to these foxes afterward? Do people eat fox meat? If you know, please share it with me. In some cases, people choose to domesticate foxes to turn them into companions who are friendly, intelligent, and attentive. Although this process may seem simple, fox domestication is truly a challenging journey that requires patience. Starting by approaching the fox gently and creating a friendly environment, along with a solid understanding of their natural behavior, is the key to making the training process effective. Using positive techniques such as rewards and interactive activities helps reinforce the relationship and trust between humans and foxes. Do you find this a good and humane method? Do you like this way of handling Australian people? Wild rabbit is a term used to refer to rabbit species that are not under human control and have become feral, depending on the environment. Wild rabbits are prevalent in many regions around the world, such as Australia, North America, and various other locations. Female wild rabbits usually begin breeding when they reach the age of 5 to 6 months. Currently, wild female rabbits in Australia typically give birth to 4 litters a year, and each litter usually has 7 to 10 babies. Wild baby rabbits often live in burrows and can only go out when their mother feels safe. Most wild rabbits become independent after 4 weeks from birth. Currently, it is estimated that there are around 287 million wild rabbits in Australia, with approximately 177 million new offspring born each year. They occupy 71% of the land area and can be found everywhere with grass and burrows. Wild rabbits often have a particular passion for vegetables, and this habit often leads to close association with destructive behavior. They frequently rush to nibble, causing the leaves to become damaged or incomplete. Similar to the issue of feral pigs in Texas, the situation of wild rabbits in Australia is a significant challenge, posing prolonged challenges for the government and farmers. To deal with the rabbit infestation, farmers have employed nets to capture them. Simultaneously, they use ferrets to enter pre-dug burrows to chase rabbits rushing into the middle of the net. Similar to the previous use of nets, this man is deploying a similar strategy around the base of the oak tree to drive the rabbits away from this area. This is a common strategy that Australian farmers often employ to deal with rabbit infestations. Watch this man as he creates a trap to catch rabbits. He just used dry tree branches and steel wire to create a simple but effective trap. I wonder why rabbit meat is not popular in Australia when there are millions of wild rabbits. Meanwhile, kangaroo meat is found in Australian butcher shops and is sold like beef. How do you feel about the way Australians deal with millions of wild rabbits? Let us know by leaving a comment below. Don't forget to click the share and subscribe button to support the channel with more new videos. Goodbye and see you again in the next videos. Now, the largest trap ever set on the farm is ready. A circular structure, 30 feet in diameter, designed not to catch just a few individuals, but an entire herd. The target is no small feat. At least 30 wild boars must be captured at once. Because if only a portion are caught, the rest will learn, become more wary, and almost never return to that trap again. This is no longer an experiment, but a real gamble. If you think they can catch the entire herd at once, leave comment Hasson now. This 500-acre farm, once a stable place of cultivation, has now become a battlefield. The deep footprints in the wet mud are becoming more numerous each night. No longer just a few isolated individuals. It's an entire herd moving in groups, advancing and destroying everything in its path. Texas is currently the epicenter of the wild boar crisis in the United States. More than 2.5 million wild boars exist there, accounting for nearly half of the national total. They are not confined to a single area. From the arid hillsides of the west, to the cotton and cornfields of the central region, to the dense riparian forests of the east, wild boars are found everywhere. They are the result of crossbreeding between escaped domestic pigs and European wild boars imported for sport hunting decades ago. This combination has created a species with incredibly strong adaptability. They can withstand high temperatures, are excellent at finding water, and can eat almost anything. An adult can weigh between 200 and 660 pounds. With their large bodies, broad shoulders, and thick layer of fat, they can destroy steel fences if the structure isn't strong enough. They live in herds called sounders, usually consisting of sows and piglets. A herd can range from 10 to over 30 individuals, moving together as a unified unit. Meanwhile, adult male pigs typically live solitary lives and only join the herd during the breeding season. They are primarily nocturnal. Especially in areas with high hunting pressure, they become even more secretive and difficult to approach. Their sense of smell is extremely keen. Even a slight change in scent or sound is enough to cause the entire pack to change direction immediately. In America, there is a species of fish that, once caught, must not be released back into the wild but must be killed on the spot. Just hearing about it is enough to send shivers down your spine, but what's even more terrifying is that after more than 20 years of being hunted and hunted, it still hasn't disappeared. So what makes a single fish species capable of rendering an entire ecosystem helpless? Comment Hasson if you want to discover the terrifying invasion of this fish species in the US. The snakehead fish. Its origins actually come from Asia, where this fish has lived for a very long time in rivers, ponds, lakes, and swamps. In its native environment, this is just a familiar fish species and is not considered dangerous or unusual at all. But after its arrival in the US, everything immediately changed. Just a glance was enough to reveal its menacing appearance. Its long, flattened head and rough scales make the snakehead fish look like a giant snake underwater. But the deeper one delves into it, the more one realizes that the most terrifying aspect of this fish lies not in its appearance, but in its incredibly resilient ability to survive and adapt. Imagine a fish that can grow to over 3 feet in length, possessing sharp teeth and an extremely aggressive hunting instinct. But the scariest part doesn't end there. The snakehead fish has a unique ability that very few fish species possess. It can breathe air directly. Thanks to its unique respiratory system, this fish often surfaces to get oxygen, allowing it to survive even in oxygen-deficient waters where many other fish cannot. While many native fish species are dying out in stagnant ponds or polluted swamps, the snakehead fish has survived and quickly become dominant. Even more frightening, as long as its skin remains sufficiently moist, the snakehead fish can survive out of water for up to 4 days. This ability is what makes this fish one of the most difficult invasive species to control. American media once likened them to fish that can walk on land. Although snakehead fish don't actually roam as freely as land-dwelling animals, their exceptional survival skills alone are enough to cause concern for many. This is just the beginning of an ecological war that will last more than 20 years. Americans have tried almost everything from toxic chemicals and strict laws to encouraging people to eat the fish as a food source, but they still haven't been able to stop them from spreading. So how did the snakehead fish, starting from just a few individuals, manage to bypass the US biological control system? And are humans gradually having to accept a new reality where invasive species are increasingly dominating in nature? Leave a like and join us in exploring the terrifying invasive journey of this fish species. Snakehead fish are not native to the United States. They were introduced by humans from Asia, primarily since the late 1990s. Initially, the purpose of the imports was quite ordinary. In many Asian communities in the United States, snakehead fish is a common food item and is often sold live at seafood markets. Others keep them as ornamental fish because of their unusual appearance and large size. However, once they mature, snakehead fish become very difficult to keep with other species. They have strong predatory instincts and are willing to eat almost any smaller organism in the same environment. Over time, some individuals begin to be released into the wild. This may be because the owners are no longer able to care for them, or it may be due to the act of releasing them without considering the consequences. To date, no single official cause has been confirmed. However, most scientists believe that these seemingly harmless actions paved the way for the snakehead fish to invade the river and lake systems of the United States. So what turned one species of fish into a real nightmare for environmental managers? The answer lies in 3 secret weapons that the snakehead fish possesses. First, they possess an incredibly remarkable ability to adapt to harsh environments. While many native fish species require clean, oxygen-rich water to survive, the snakehead fish almost completely reverses this. They can still thrive in murky, hot, stagnant, and oxygen-deficient waters, places where most other species are forced to reduce activity or leave. Next is the incredible reproductive rate of this fish species. A female can lay up to 50,000 eggs, and the eggs begin to hatch after only 1 or 2 days. This means that new generations appear so quickly that humans haven't even had time to control the old herd before new ones are born. But the most terrifying thing lies in their instinct to protect their young. In nature, fish usually abandon their offspring after laying eggs, but snakehead fish are different. Both the male and female fish fiercely guard their brood during the early stages of life. As a result, the survival rate of the fry is much higher than normal. Furthermore, this species can reproduce multiple times a year when conditions are favorable. This means that if a portion of the population is wiped out, the rest is still able to recover relatively quickly. This is why control efforts often only create temporary lulls and are very difficult to eradicate completely. At this point, many optimists believe that with the combined strength of humans and fierce native predators, the snakehead fish would eventually be subdued. But reality is much colder than that. While drastic human measures are only effective on a small scale, like a small pond, when it comes to large rivers and lakes, all efforts are almost like throwing salt into the sea. The last hope now rests on natural predators. But the reality isn't much better. One of the first candidates was the American alligator. Many studies show that fish make up about 20% to 50% of a crocodile's diet, depending on the region and time of year. Most of the prey they hunt is typically between 8 and 24 inches long. Meanwhile, adult snakehead fish are typically about 1 to 2.5 feet long, so in terms of size, crocodiles are perfectly capable of hunting them. But the problem lies in the number in the wild. The density of American alligators is relatively low, averaging only about 1 to 5 individuals per square mile. Meanwhile, snakehead fish reproduce and recover their populations too quickly. This disparity means that the predatory pressure from crocodiles is not strong enough to drive down the population of the invasive fish species. Native predators may still eat snakehead fish, but none depend on them as a primary food source to create sustained predator pressure. After more than 20 years, snakehead fish in the US is no longer just a distant concern, but has become a real and increasingly difficult to control ecological problem. Ultimately, the story of the snakehead fish is not just about an invasive species. It also serves as a reminder that when a silent threat persists for too long, the consequences often extend beyond the present. Sometimes the scariest thing isn't the initial shock, but the slow, almost irreversible changes that occur over time. And that's not just true for nature. In life, many small issues, such as a bad habit, a wrong decision, or early signs of trouble, are often easily overlooked, but if left unchecked for too long, they can lead to significant consequences later on. In your opinion, what is something people tend to overlook in today's life, but which can have significant long-term consequences? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Hello, my friend. Currently, the issue of the increasing presence of snakes and their invasion of people's territories is not only a challenge in the United States, but also a significant concern in China. Let's explore how farmers in China are dealing with the issue of snake invasion together. The growing presence of snakes and their invasion in China is becoming alarming. Sudden increases in snake numbers have been recorded in recent years. According to statistics, the number of snake bites has tripled in the past decade. Some areas even report significant snake densities, up to hundreds of snakes per mile. This poses significant challenges in managing and controlling these reptile populations, raising concerns about public security and health risks. The impact of the snake invasion issue has become evident in many provinces and cities in China, especially in southern regions such as Guangdong, Guangxi, and Yunnan. Snakes are particularly abundant in areas near rivers, lakes, and marshes, as well as in agricultural areas. This poses a significant challenge for the local communities and authorities, requiring effective and timely measures to be taken to protect both the security and livelihoods of the residents. Leave number 1 in the comments to continue exploring invasive snakes in China with me. In the list of invasive snake species in China, there are some particularly notable ones, such as the king cobra, the world's longest venomous snake that can reach up to 5.5 meters in length. The water snake is another common species, capable of reaching a length of 2 meters, while the green snake, a small-sized venomous snake, typically grows to about 60 centimeters. The presence of these species in China poses unique challenges in managing and controlling these harmful wild animals. The particular danger of the snake invasion issue lies in its potential to cause death or serious injuries whenever there is contact. The consequences not only extend to the psychological aspect but also spread to the economic dimension. Families of snakebite victims must face significant financial burdens from medical treatment costs and damages resulting from time off work or reduced work capacity. This is not just an individual problem, but also a challenge for the entire community in dealing with the widespread impact of the snake invasion issue. Snake invasion not only brings severe economic consequences, but also affects various aspects of life and social activities. Livestock and poultry are often the primary targets of snake attacks, causing significant economic losses for farmers in terms of reduced profits and production. Additionally, snakes cause substantial damage to infrastructure and houses along rivers and lakes, adding financial burdens for repairs and reconstruction. This creates not only an individual problem but also a challenge for the community, as these damages can spread and impact the stability of the region. The consequences of snake invasion not only have a significant impact on the economy and community, but also negatively affect the environment and ecosystem. The increasing presence of snakes has disrupted the balance in the ecosystem, influencing natural processes and the food chain. Other animal species in the area also face considerable pressure from the snake invasion, as they become a threat to the survival and development of other species. This poses a significant challenge to protecting and maintaining the ecological balance in the face of the growing threat from snake invasion. So do you know what causes the snake invasion? One perspective suggests that snakes are experiencing significant environmental damage due to human intervention. Forests are currently facing destruction, and ponds are shrinking, creating an increasingly limited habitat for snakes. The loss of hiding and living spaces forces snakes to move to residential areas, searching for food and a safe haven. This not only harms the environment but also alters natural processes, posing significant challenges in maintaining the balance and sustainability of the ecosystem. According to some sources, assessments from local residents indicate that shortcomings in controlling the invasion of snakes are posing a significant challenge. Lack of experience and sufficient knowledge on how to deal with snakes is another issue, increasing the difficulty in addressing the situation. Furthermore, low awareness of the dangers posed by snakes in the community complicates the implementation of consistent and effective measures. This requires close collaboration between the community, local authorities, and experts to develop and implement effective control measures. Several solutions can be applied to prevent snake invasions. Firstly, constructing protective fences around residential areas and farms will help keep snakes from accessing and infiltrating these areas. Secondly, there is a need to enhance awareness of the dangers posed by snakes and provide effective preventive measures so that people can protect themselves. The combination of these measures will contribute to minimizing risks and enhancing safety for the community and farmers. If you find this approach effective, please leave a number 1 in the comments section. Controlling the snake population can be achieved through manual methods or the use of traps, which are effective handling approaches. The use of chemicals to eliminate snakes is also a viable option. However, this should be carried out by experts to ensure safety and achieve optimal effectiveness. A flexible combination of these measures can provide high efficiency in snake control and minimize the number of harmful snakes. Do you know what purposes these captured snakes will be used for? And, of course, the edible snakes that farmers decide to use in cuisine are not just ingredients for delicious meals but also offer many special health benefits. A unique aspect you may not know is that snake meat is highly valued for its nutritional content, providing nutrient supplementation, enhancing health, and having positive effects such as treating low blood pressure, reducing joint pain, addressing fatigue symptoms, as well as healing skin conditions, especially chronic itching conditions like eczema. Snakeskin is also used for crafting handmade items, and its popularity arises from its exceptionally unique characteristics. Snakeskin not only possesses high durability and is suitable for prolonged use, but it also provides each snake with distinctive patterns, adding uniqueness to products made from snakeskin. Considered a premium, luxurious, and classy leather, snakeskin often comes at a much higher price compared to other types of leather. It is crucial to note the importance of purchasing snakeskin from reputable sources to ensure the quality and uniformity of the products. Do you want to own an item made from snakeskin? Please share with me. And with that data, they realized the core problem wasn't catching one pig, but catching the entire herd at once. And so the ingenious trap was born. The small box traps were replaced by giant cage traps, usually circular or rectangular, constructed of sturdy steel and capable of holding 30, 40, or even 50 pigs at a time. It no longer resembled a fearsome cage. It resembled an open space where pigs could freely come and go. After setting up the gate, the farmer leaves it wide open and begins the baiting process. Corn and feed were scattered both outside and deep inside the pen. For 7 to 14 days, sometimes extending to 3 weeks with particularly vigilant herds, they simply fed the pigs daily. Gradually, the pen ceased to be a strange object. It became the easiest and safest place to eat. And when the entire herd is completely off guard, 21st century technology comes in. Cameras transmit live images from inside the trap to the phone. The gate is connected to a digital signal activation mechanism. The farmer can be at home, in the city, or even in a very distant place, and still monitor the entire herd feeding inside. The decisive moment is when every pig is inside the pen and no individual is left outside. There is no chance of escape to learn and pass on the experience to the rest of the herd. That's what makes this trap so ingenious. It doesn't just catch a few pigs. It wipes out an entire breed from the farmer's land in one decisive action. If you believe this is one of the smartest solutions ever created to deal with wild boars, comment Hasson below. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to continue following the real confrontations between humans, technology, and the planet's most dangerous invasive species. In North America, gray wolves are more than just symbols of the wild. They are expert predators, born to kill. In attacks on livestock, wolves don't hunt to eat individual animals. They hunt for control, to eliminate entire herds. In Minnesota, records show a wolf pack can kill up to 70 sheep in a single night. The damage isn't just financial, it's the lasting fear. Faced with this reality, farmers and hunters are forced to act. In the United States, wolf hunting is not indiscriminate. All activities are strictly regulated by state governments. The goal is not to exterminate wolves, but to minimize damage while maintaining a stable population. Wolf hunting begins in the fall and continues through late winter or early spring, depending on the state. To participate, hunters must be at least 18 years old, have a valid license, and adhere to specific quotas. Each state regulates the number of wolves allowed to be hunted each season. Last year alone, Idaho issued over 180,000 hunting permits. This number reflects two things: the practical needs of farmers and the importance of wolf control to rural life. In some areas, hunters are required to report the exact location and number of wolves shot. The ideal shooting distance is between 100 and 220 yards. The target is usually behind the shoulder or chest to ensure a fatal, swift, and humane shot. Millions of poisonous toads are swarming across Australia. One of the century's biggest ecological disasters is far from over. If just one tiny creature can bring down snakes, crocodiles, lizards, and even Australia's ancient ecosystem, aren't you curious what's really happening? Comment Hasson if you want to explore the terrifying battle for survival between Australian animals and this invasive cane toad. In the sweltering heat of the northern Australian monsoon, a keelback snake moves through the grass along the bank of a freshwater stream. It stopped, raising its head. Something lay motionless in the shallow water ahead. Thick, rough, and wide, it weighed almost as much as a brick. The snake had never encountered such a creature before. It attacked, and 4 minutes later, the snake was dead. That scene has been played out millions of times across Australia since 1935, and for decades, it seemed like a story with only one ending. An almost unstoppable invasive species is silently destroying one of the oldest and most diverse ecosystems on Earth. Wherever the cane toad appears, many predators die there. For decades, nature seemed to have been completely defeated by this animal. But then things started to change. Silently, in the swamps, streams, and even within the bodies of the surviving species, nature gradually found ways to adapt. And what scientists discovered later became one of the most astonishing examples of the speed of evolution. In a wild population. Leave a like and let's delve deeper into the battle between Australian snakes and cane toads, and what it reveals about the ever-changing pace of life when survival is the only option. To understand what nature is fighting against, we first need to understand what kind of creature the cane toad actually is. This isn't just an ordinary large toad. A mature cane toad in northern Australia can be almost the size of a dinner plate and weigh nearly 2 pounds. Some individuals in Queensland are even longer than 10 inches. When seen up close, the size of these toads is truly frightening to many people. Behind the toad's head, along both sides of its shoulders, are 2 large venom glands. When bitten or subjected to pressure, these glands release bufotoxin, a potent toxin that can disrupt heart function in just minutes. Tim started beating erratically, then gradually stopped completely. For smaller predators, this process sometimes only takes about 15 minutes. What makes the cane toad particularly dangerous in Australia is that the wildlife there has never evolved the ability to defend itself against it. For millions of years, snakes, lizards, and Australian carnivorous mammals, they have learned to survive among extremely venomous creatures such as taipan snakes, cobras, and funnel-web spiders. But the bufotoxin in the cane toad is completely different. This is a type of toxin that the Australian ecosystem has never faced before. When native predators first eat cane toads, their bodies have almost no defenses whatsoever, and in many cases they die within minutes. The statistics following the spread of the cane toad are unbelievable. In areas where cane toads live in stable populations, populations of large predatory snakes and monitor lizards, have declined by 50% to 90% in just a few years. Yellow-spotted monitor lizard lost from vast areas that were once their habitat. The northern kangaroo, a small carnivorous marsupial, has lost more than 90% of its population in affected areas. The number of juvenile freshwater crocodiles has decreased by about 70% in some river systems. It all stems from one species and a gravely wrong decision made in 1935. The original plan seemed reasonable, although its implementation led to disaster. Sugarcane is the backbone of Queensland's economy, and a type of beetle larva living deep underground is destroying it from the roots. The pesticides cannot penetrate deep enough to cause harm. At that time, some people heard that the large toads in the Caribbean could help control sugarcane pests in plantations. The idea quickly spread throughout the agricultural industry, even faster than the research itself. By 1937, over 62,000 cane toads had been bred and released across the fields with the belief that they would save Australia's sugar industry. The problem quickly became apparent almost immediately afterward. Sugarcane pests typically live on the stems and tops of sugarcane plants. Meanwhile, the cane toad hunts underground. That means the two species almost never meet. The cane toad completely failed in its mission to bring it to Australia. But instead of disappearing, they proliferated across the continent because there were virtually no natural predators that dared to safely prey on them. Today, Australia is estimated to have around 200 million cane toads. They have spread across more than 460,000 square miles and continue to expand westward at a rate of tens of miles per year. If you find this story disturbing as it is, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to follow more real-life ecological crises where nature and human decisions collide in ways no one could have predicted. But let's get back to the snakes, because this is where the story begins to change. It's no longer just the collapse of an ecosystem, but an incredible process of adaptation taking place in nature. Snakes have a major weakness against cane toads, and that weakness isn't just in their venom. Their weakness lies in their very body structure. Snakes typically assess prey based on size. If the prey is small enough to swallow, they will attempt to attack and devour it. Biologists call this type of hunting based on mouth size. Simply put, snakes usually decide to attack prey based on whether they can swallow it, without knowing how dangerous the prey is. With a snake in the water, the cane toad lying still in the grass looks like a perfect meal. It lunges forward and bites. The venom glands at the back of the toad's head are compressed and release buffotoxin. And in most cases, the outcome is almost always death. But then the researchers began to notice something unusual. Populations of red-bellied black snakes that have coexisted with cane toads for decades are no longer declining as drastically as those that are encountering this invasive species for the first time. When researchers began measuring the bodies of these snakes, they discovered something that truly surprised the scientific community. The size of a snake's head changes over time. Black snakes with red bellies in areas that have had cane toads for many years often have heads that are smaller in proportion to their body length, a stark contrast to populations that have never been exposed to cane toads. This difference may not seem significant at first glance, but biologically, it is extremely important. A snake with a smaller head would have difficulty swallowing a fully grown cane toad whole. The vulnerability caused by limited mouth size has been structurally mitigated by natural selection, not over thousands of years, but within just a few decades. This mechanism is very direct and uncompromising. Keelback snakes are learning to hunt only small toads to avoid excessively high levels of venom. Meanwhile, cane toads are evolving with longer legs to spread more quickly across new territories. Nature doesn't stand still. It's silently changing to survive in the face of one of the planet's most dangerous invasive species. Wild boars often conceal themselves in cornfields for various reasons. Firstly, cornfields provide a rich source of food, with young corn, corn roots, and other parts of the plant being their preferred choices. The dense foliage of corn leaves and the height of the corn plants offer protection and cover for wild boars, helping them stay away from light and the eyes of predators. The natural habitat and inherent shelter within the cornfield contribute to why wild boars favor hiding in this environment. Absolutely. Not only cornfields, but other types of dense vegetation also serve as ideal hiding places for wild boars. They live and reproduce right in these areas. The swimming ability of wild boars often depends on individual characteristics and environmental conditions. They tend to prefer living near water sources and can use swimming to evade pursuers or search for food in different areas. This feature helps them adapt to natural habitats and diverse food sources.
Thanks, Satch.
Even professional hunters go to the extent of using private aircraft to scan for wild boars on the run. On vast fields, out of every 10 wild boars, only 3 might successfully escape. After the hunts led by hunters, the number of deceased wild boars can reach hundreds of thousands. The approach adopted by farmers here is to let the carcasses decompose naturally and become organic fertilizer for the upcoming growing season. Hunting wild boars at night is a strategy primarily based on the natural behavior of these animals. Wild boars tend to become more active and move around more at night, making hunting during this time more effective.
Hey pig, hey pig.
This is because they take advantage of the darkness to reduce the likelihood of detection, as their vision is not as sharp as during the day.
Hey bud.
The reduced light also allows hunters to approach their targets more gently without stimulating these animals. This can also be a unique and unfamiliar experience for farmers and hunters. If you fired a rifle bullet from a distance of just about 65 feet, most people would think the target would go down immediately. But this creature, weighing nearly 660 pounds, barely backs down. With skin almost 2 inches thick, it still charges straight towards you at over 30 miles per hour. And that's just the beginning. Comment Hassan if you want to know why even experienced hunters are wary of this animal. It can break through electric fences, remember trap locations, and overpower entire packs of hunting dogs, including those wearing specialized Kevlar armor. This animal not only possesses formidable strength, but also reproduces at an extremely rapid rate, up to 20 offspring per litter. Even scientists and animal control forces have to admit that they are almost powerless to completely eradicate this species. And the truth about the animal that created one of the strangest ecological disasters will be revealed now. It all began with unusual signs appearing at dawn in agricultural areas bordering the tropical rainforest. Farmers woke up to find that nearly 70 hectares of cornfields had been destroyed overnight. The damage quickly exceeded 10% of the yield, but the way they devastated the crops was what puzzled people the most. The intruder didn't eat all the food. It would take a bite from one plant, crush an ear of corn on another, and then leave it on the ground. This no longer resembles the normal foraging behavior of wild animals, but rather a form of systematic destruction. Initially, farmers and local authorities believed the culprits were herds of native South American peccaries lacking food due to the drought. Meanwhile, livestock farmers, after losing sheep and even guard dogs, believed that the nighttime attacks were caused by leopards. They tried every familiar defense measure, erecting fences, setting cage traps, and reinforcing guard dogs. But it was all almost useless. The steel fence was shattered, the traps remained empty, and the most tenacious hunting dogs were found dead with deep bite wounds near their femoral arteries. The footprints imprinted in the mud are many times larger than those of native wild boars. A colossal creature is silently dominating the forests, yet almost no one is able to pursue it. A sense of helplessness quickly spread as people realized this threat wasn't limited to just a few isolated farms. To date, sightings of this animal have been recorded in over 800 cities across Brazil. It began its migration from the Pampas region, crossed the Pantanal swamps, and gradually approached the edge of the Amazon rainforest. When environmental experts and IBAMA forces got involved, the mysterious creature finally revealed itself. It's not a leopard. They are not native wild boars either. That is Javaporco, one of the most serious ecological mistakes humans have ever made. To trace the origins of this wild boar species, many documents record that the story began in 1,904 inches Argentina, then spread to Uruguay. The South American elite at the time imported purebred wild boars from Europe for sport hunting and to provide an exotic source of meat. In Europe, wild boars are traditionally part of a balanced ecosystem. Harsh winters with temperatures below 0 degrees Celsius and hungry packs of gray wolves are natural factors that help control their population. But when brought to South America, wild boars found paradise. There was no snow there to freeze them, and not many predators left to keep them under control. Even leopards have become extremely rare after years of being hunted by humans. European wild boars began to multiply rapidly, crossing numerous borders and eventually making their way into Brazil. When the hunting farms went bankrupt, the fences deteriorated, and the animals escaped completely into the wild. But the real disaster only begins when European wild boars encounter herds of domestic pigs that have been left to roam freely or have escaped into the forest. This hybridization creates a new organism that possesses both wild strength and extremely high adaptability, a phenomenon that biology calls hybrid vigor. Purebred wild boars possess very strong muscles, a thick skull like a natural armor, and an extremely aggressive survival instinct. However, they reproduce quite slowly, usually only about 3–5 piglets per litter. Meanwhile, domestic pigs are weaker and less aggressive, but have a very high reproductive capacity. They can give birth to nearly 20 piglets in a single litter. When these two lines crossbred, they inadvertently created a hybrid breed that possessed both wild strength and explosive reproductive speed. That's the Javaporco, a creature that inherits the ferocity and adaptability of the European wild boar, combined with the almost uncontrollable reproductive capacity of the domestic pig. The natural world of South America has almost never had to face a creature like this. A hybrid species weighing hundreds of pounds, both strong and aggressive, and reproducing at an extremely rapid rate. But what makes Javaporco dangerous isn't just its size. In direct confrontations, many hunters realize they are essentially shooting at a moving wall. Unlike domestic pigs, which accumulate a lot of soft fat, Javaporco's body is made up of thick, firm muscle groups, allowing it to accelerate very quickly. Particularly in the shoulder and flank areas, their bodies develop a natural biological armor consisting of thick skin, scar tissue, hardened fat, and dried mud, which can be nearly 2 inches thick. This armor absorbs most of the impact force, causing many rifle bullets to only penetrate the skin without reaching internal organs. To take down a javaporco, hunters typically need to use high-powered firearms or shoot precisely at tiny vital points on the skull, something extremely difficult when the animal is charging at nearly 50 kilometers per hour. And that's only part of the problem. Their long fangs constantly rub against each other whenever they chew or open their mouths, keeping them as sharp as knives. With a height reaching the waist of an adult, a single head-on collision can cause serious injury within minutes. But what truly frightens many hunters isn't just their strength or fangs, but their intelligence and how they coordinate as a pack. If you've heard of this animal before, please leave a like. Even the most experienced hunters admit that this hybrid pack is more dangerous than they ever thought, knowing how to feign panic and run away to lure hunting dogs into muddy areas or narrow ravines. When the dogs lose their momentum, the entire pack immediately turns around and counterattacks. Today, almost every hunting dog involved in hunting javaporco must wear Kevlar armor and GPS tracking devices to reduce the risk of being killed in the forest. But the confrontation between the hunters and the hybrid pigs is only a small part of a much larger problem. Wherever javaporco appears, the local ecosystem begins to be disrupted. One of the first species to be affected was the native South American pig species, their direct competitors. Deep in the forest, javaporco's destruction is happening silently but on a massive scale. This hybrid species has almost no sweat glands, so they have to immerse themselves in mud and water to cool their bodies. Whenever they spot a clean stream or underground spring, the entire herd will swarm towards it, tearing up the banks, stirring up the mud at the bottom, and defecating right there. In just a short time, the once pristine waters turned into polluted, bacteria-filled mud puddles. What's more worrying is that the impact of wild boars extends beyond just crops or ecosystems. When they dig in the soil to find food, they inadvertently release large amounts of carbon trapped in the ground into the atmosphere. Scientists estimate that the global activity of wild boars generates emissions equivalent to those of more than 1.1 million cars operating for a full year. In other words, their spread is directly exacerbating climate change. But the greatest danger this animal poses is almost invisible to the naked eye. Perhaps humans once believed that we could move wildlife across the ocean like chess pieces and have complete control over nature. But we have underestimated the complexity of genetics, the adaptability of wildlife, and the long-term consequences. Nature doesn't really fail. It just always reacts in its own way. Do you think humans will continue to make such biological mistakes in the future? Leave your comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel to follow the next stories. But in this case, the farmer chose a solution that could handle the entire herd at once. The circular trap, constructed from 4-gauge steel, is as sturdy as a fortress. The circular design is no accident. It creates an open space, making the pigs feel safe and confident enough to venture deep inside. The 8-foot-high, 150-pound steel gate is connected via LTE. This means the operator can remotely close the trap using only a phone. The trap is placed at a crossroads where the pigs frequently move through. T-shaped steel posts are driven approximately 90 centimeters deep into the ground to withstand the immense force exerted by the adult pigs. The pigeons vanished in broad daylight. No sound, no trace. Watch the entire video to find out what human mistake created this unusual predator. During the day, in what seemed like the safest spot, pigeons bathing at the river's edge suddenly vanished without a sound, a feather, or any sign of a struggle. Only when a high-speed camera captured the actual moment did people discover that the culprit didn't come from the sky but had leaped straight up from beneath the water's surface. In a peaceful town in southern France, something very unsettling was happening in broad daylight. On the riverside Pebble Beach, city pigeons leisurely preened their feathers, bathed, and an unseen terror was taking shape. It all began when people noticed a mysterious drop in the pigeon population. Not from disease, but from disappearance. A pigeon was calmly bathing at the water's edge. Then, in the blink of an eye, it was gone. The entire process was eerily clean. Scientists then put forward several hypotheses. If the culprit is a bird of prey, the attack usually comes down from above, leaving a chaotic scene. If it were a fox or a wild cat, it would be difficult for it to remain so intact. Because killing prey requires an extremely fierce struggle. But here, the victim vanished in just 0.25 seconds. Unable to explain it using familiar theories, they began to suspect a strange virus and then shifted their blame to bird predators. But the more they followed the case, the more the old explanation seemed forced. When the mystery reached its peak, researchers installed a system of high-speed cameras along the riverbank, and what appeared on the screen stunned many. The predator neither emerged from the sky nor from the bushes. It sprang forth from the depths of the river. That's the European catfish, a true underwater monster that has learned to hunt on land. The biggest shock here is that the laws of nature have been completely reversed. For pigeons, they instinctively watch the sky and the land but are completely unaware of the threat from underwater. Therefore, the tragedy is not simply a few birds being eaten. Next, you will see why a fish that normally lives in the mud can transform into a predator on land. What mistakes have humans made decades ago? And even more frightening is that this crisis may not be over in France. Before we move on to the next parts, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to support us and give us more motivation to create more interesting content in the future. To understand why a normally agile bird has become so careless, we must look at their daily routines at the Tarn River in southern France. Every day they gather at the water's edge to bathe, shake off dust, and clean their feathers to maintain optimal flying condition. This is a very normal, almost mandatory action for birds that have lived for a long time in urban environments. And it is in that moment of relaxation that their self-defense instincts are at their lowest. But that's only part of the problem. The most important detail lies in a biological structure of the pigeon. The secret lies in a tiny organ located at the base of the pigeon's tail, the uropygial gland. This gland secretes a special oil that the bird uses its beak to apply evenly to its feathers, making them waterproof and maintaining the necessary strength for flight. Each time it bathes, it applies this substance all over its body. At first glance, this seems like a very normal biological reflex. But the problem is that a small amount of that oil doesn't stay on the fur. Instead, it escapes, mixes with the current, and flows downstream. To us, that oil slick is completely invisible, but beneath the murky water, it's like a map guiding predators. This giant European catfish actually has extremely poor eyesight. In murky water, its eyes are almost useless. However, nature has compensated it with super-sensitive sensory whiskers that help it detect tiny chemical signals in the water. Specifically, this refers to the oil trails from the pigeon's feathers. In addition, it also detects the mechanical vibrations created by the bird when it walks on gravel, flaps its wings, or touches its feet to the surface of the shore. In other words, the pigeon is unwittingly transmitting a message informing its enemies of its precise location. When the oil trails and the vibrations match, its fate is sealed. Even more terrifying, the catfish can creep up on its prey in extremely shallow water, sometimes less than 4 inches deep, without creating a single ripple or noticeable disturbance. It was absolutely silent. The riverbank was no longer a resting place but had transformed into a sophisticated ecological trap. The pigeons didn't lose because they were weaker. They lost because they were still acting according to old rules while their surroundings had changed ruthlessly. This story is proof that nature doesn't need noisy attacks to bring down its prey. Sometimes, simply turning a harmless habit into a telltale sign can turn even the most familiar things into a death trap. The truth behind the mysterious disappearances lies not just in a single bite, but in pushing the story to a whole new level of horror. The European giant catfish is one of the largest freshwater fish species on the planet. A true monster beneath the water, it can grow up to 10 feet long, weigh more than 260 pounds, and live for nearly 80 years. In Spain and Italy, some individuals have reportedly been caught weighing as much as 300 pounds. With that size, it's no longer an ordinary fish but a true muscle machine. But what impressed the scientists wasn't its size, but its hunting method. Normally, this catfish would just linger at the bottom, in the mud, feeding on carrion or hunting a few small fish. Therefore, their sudden leap from the river surface to catch birds on the shore almost contradicts all conventional understandings of the behavior of bottom-dwelling fish. This behavior is so audacious that it's been compared to how killer whales leap onto beaches to catch seals. A creature not originally born to hunt on land, but now they've transformed their massive bodies into incredibly fast and precise ambush weapons. The entire attack takes only 1 to 2 seconds, yet the success rate is as high as 28%. This number is truly terrifying. To put it into perspective, the hunting success rate of many notorious land predators like lions and tigers is only around 10 to 20%. This proves that this is not a random, impulsive act, but an extremely effective hunting strategy. When a fish species accustomed to bottom feeding achieves hunting efficiency far exceeding that of professional land-based predators, it's a sign that the environment has forced it to evolve its behavior in the most extreme way. But the root cause of this story only truly becomes clear when researchers trace back the past. The European catfish is actually not native to this river. Going back in time to 1983, sport fishermen brought it from Eastern Europe to the Tarn River. Their goal at the time was simply to catch a large, strong enough fish to satisfy their thrill of conquest. A decision made for personal recreation, without any malicious intent to destroy, but the consequences were unforeseen. Therefore, a harsh truth emerges. The fish was the direct cause of the pigeons' deaths, but the hand that initiated this tragedy was actually that of humans. And from here, the story is no longer just a record of a strange predator, but a stark warning. Just one misplaced link in the chain can rewrite the entire old order of a river. The consequences of releasing this fish into the river don't strike immediately like a storm. They silently gnaw away at the ecosystem for decades. An ecological disaster doesn't usually begin with a loud bang, but with small, repeated changes until every link in the chain of life is pulled off course. In the case of the Tarn River, that process lasted about 3 decades. That's enough time for an alien species to rise to absolute dominance. Once adapted to its new environment, this European catfish species exploded in numbers at a dizzying rate. They have a clear advantage in size, strength, and the ability to dominate the top of the food chain. Meanwhile, native species completely lack any defense mechanisms or rivals capable of stopping this expansion. When a predator becomes overwhelmingly dominant, tragedy is inevitable. The total biomass of native fish has plummeted by 80%. This is not merely a statistic on paper, but evidence that the structure of life underwater has been completely disrupted. Scientists call this a form of ecological cascade. This means that if just one aggressive invasive species takes the top of the food chain, the entire structure below it can collapse in a chain reaction. This is a common misconception when people hear about invasive species. They only see the addition of one animal to the river but fail to see that the real price lies in the collapse of the entire existing balance. Ironically, at some point, even the dominant species begins to pay the price for its own outburst. When the catfish population increased too much, food became extremely scarce. The river was depleted, no longer having enough protein to nourish this enormous population, and it was this brutal pressure for survival that drove them to an extreme choice. They were cornered and forced to risk their lives by rushing ashore in search of survival. Nature never changes without reason. It reacts very slowly, but when pushed too far, it will respond with survival methods that would send shivers down one's spine. When a new feeding strategy can spread from one generation to the next, it becomes far more sustainable than a simple survival reaction. Another striking detail is that the average size of these fish in France has dropped to around 5 feet, much smaller than the 1-0-foot monsters once recorded. But don't let that number fool you. Their shrinking size indicates that the pressure of food scarcity underwater is extremely intense, forcing them to maintain their dominance through flexibility and behavioral changes. An organism that was once only a problem in a remote area can now silently encroach upon large cities where native ecosystems are completely unprepared. Therefore, when humans misplace a link in the chain of nature, nature will not stand idly by and take the consequences. It will adjust itself in the most brutal ways. Like the case in Brazil, where an invasive African predator has wiped out 80% of native fish stocks. The message has become very clear. The ecological crisis is not something far away in Antarctica or the Amazon rainforest. It's happening right here in the rivers that flow through the city where you live. By the time we realize it, the rules of nature have been completely rewritten, and the price to pay is often far greater than we can imagine. From a few birds disappearing by the riverbank, this story reveals a much larger truth. Just one misplaced human intervention can distort an entire ecosystem, forcing countless species to change their behavior for survival. And ultimately, it is humans who will face the long-term consequences. A seemingly small change, if misplaced, can have enormous and long-lasting consequences. Even more frightening, these consequences often don't come about dramatically but silently accumulate until they are very difficult to rectify. In your opinion, is the fish hunting the bird or the initial mistake made by humans? Leave a comment below to share your perspective with everyone. And if you find this content interesting and enjoyable, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to support us and give us more motivation to create even better videos in the future. Hundreds of millions of wild birds invading cover the sky, creating a truly horrifying spectacle. But what's noteworthy is the damage they cause. In this crowd, there are many species, such as Dublin birds, starlings, and many others. Wild birds, commonly referred to as invasive species, stand out with their deep black plumage. They are widespread across North America, especially in the United States. According to a survey in 2021, an estimated 120 million to 190 million wild birds inhabit the United States. And the total population of this bird species in North America could exceed 630 million. The breeding and nesting of magpies typically occur in spring, specifically from March to April. The cycle from laying eggs to self-sustaining lasts about 26 to 29 days, including an incubation period of 14 to 15 days and nurturing the brood for 12 to 14 days. They love seeds and often congregate around fields. Their feeding behavior is not limited to that, but also includes searching for other areas where there are many seeds to eat. The bird flocks not only damage crops but also often cause nuisance to pedestrians by attacking and teasing them. A camera captured the moment a flock of birds swooped down onto the road in Mexico, fortunately with no pedestrians around. To deal with this troublesome bird flock, people employ the method of net trapping. Using food as bait to lure them, when the birds flock to feed, people pull the strings to capture them in the net. In addition to using nets to trap the troublesome bird flock, people also employ rubber pellet guns as a form of entertainment. This technique requires quick and accurate aiming skills, posing a challenge for those participating. Not wanting to waste resources from these bird flocks, farmers have utilized them to create enticing and exotic dishes. Have you ever enjoyed this dish? We've just witnessed the process of dealing with 400 million birds. Which moment impressed you the most in the video? Share your thoughts with us in the comments. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons to support the channel for more upcoming videos. Goodbye, and see you in the next videos. Americans often participate in wild boar hunting activities in many locations across the country, where there is a diversity of natural landscapes and forest environments. One of the most popular states for this practice is Texas, with strict management and a large feral hog population. Florida is also a popular destination, with rich forests and diverse hunting areas. States such as Georgia, South Carolina, and California also offer many opportunities for feral hog hunting enthusiasts. The southern and central regions of the United States are also quite popular destinations among the hunting community. You are not allowed to mirror any action in this video. Encouraging the consumption of wild boar meat in the United States has become increasingly popular in recent years, especially as the population of wild boars has risen, leading to environmental and agricultural issues. People are becoming more aware of the nutritional value and flavor of wild boar meat compared to commercially raised pork. This trend may have started around the late 20th century and has become more widespread in the past decade. Consumers are placing a growing emphasis on eating clean and natural, and wild boar meat meets these requirements, as the animals live in a natural environment, have a diverse diet, and a freer lifestyle. The one who once ruled the swamp has now become the prey. If even pythons longer than 15 feet are starting to disappear from the Everglades, are you curious what's really lurking in the shadows? Comment Hasson if you want to explore this predatory behavior. It appears that a predator capable of killing even giant Burmese pythons is emerging in Florida. But before we figure out what's actually hunting them, we need to understand why these snakes were present in the Everglades in the first place. Burmese pythons are not native to this area, which means there has been human intervention. In nature, animals don't travel such long distances on their own. They are native to Southeast Asia. They live in Myanmar, Thailand, and China. They were brought to Florida in the late 20th century through the exotic pet trade. At that time, pythons were widely traded as pets, and the demand was quite high. Then the familiar pattern began to repeat itself. Some escaped, while others were intentionally released by their owners when they realized that raising such an animal was much more difficult than they had imagined. And that's when pythons began spreading throughout the state. The rapid spread of pythons was certainly not accidental, because not every introduced species can expand across such a large area so quickly. A lot depends on the conditions it encounters in the new environment. If a predatory species lacks natural control, no one will hunt it, and nothing will control its population. Population can explode at an alarming rate, That's exactly what happened in Florida. Local wildlife had never dealt with animals this large before and did not recognize them as a threat. They are not intimidated by any defensive strategy, not even the most basic fear response. As a result, the pythons found themselves in near-perfect conditions, with abundant food and very little resistance, which gave them a huge advantage. The extent of the damage quickly became apparent, and of course, the balance of the ecosystem was altered. When a predator gains a clear advantage and begins to dominate, it puts immense pressure on its prey. That's exactly what happened in Florida's Everglades National Park, and it happened very quickly. Mammal populations have declined by more than 90% in just a few decades. Pandas, rabbits, and opossums have almost disappeared on a large scale. Such rapid changes are extremely unusual in nature. Normally, such changes occur much more gradually. What makes the situation even worse is that pythons are capable of taking down very large prey. There have been documented cases of them swallowing entire deer and even fighting crocodiles. Strange? Of course it's strange. Let me explain why. For most animals, prey size is limited by their own body size. It seems logical to assume that head width would determine the upper limit, but the Burmese python doesn't seem to understand that. Their jaws are not fixed into a rigid structure. The lower jaw is divided into two halves, and each side can move independently. Between its two jaws is an elastic ligament that allows the jaws to expand further. In addition, the python's skin and soft tissues can stretch considerably and adapt to the shape of its prey without tearing. Therefore, instead of tearing the animal apart, the snake slowly swallows it whole, almost pulling it in little by little, even if the prey is considerably larger than its head. Estimating the actual number of pythons living in Florida has proven very difficult. With their prolific reproductive capabilities, their numbers can increase rapidly, especially without significant control mechanisms. Female pythons lay dozens of eggs, and if most of the hatchlings survive, the population can skyrocket out of control in a short period. Some estimates put the number in the tens of thousands, but no one can say for sure exactly how many there are. As I said, they are very secretive and rarely seen. Eventually, pythons became a major threat to the ecosystem, and that began to seriously worry scientists and wildlife conservation officials. There seemed to be no way to stop them. My first suspect was a crocodile. It's a powerful predator, perfectly capable of taking down large prey. Especially since pythons have previously attacked crocodiles, perhaps it has become a long-standing feud. A crocodile attack usually leaves a very recognizable mark. It grabs its prey, begins to spin around, and tears it apart piece by piece. This is Florida, where the southern part of the state is covered by the vast Everglades wetlands. Decades ago, an invasive reptile species quietly appeared here. They didn't swim to America on their own, but followed humans through the exotic pet market. Some individuals were released or escaped from captivity, No one could have imagined that those pythons would later turn the Everglades into one of America's biggest ecological crises. As encounters between pythons and other predators became more frequent, a bold theory began to emerge. What would happen if African honey badgers were introduced into the Everglades to confront these giant pythons? Want to explore this crazy theory? Leave a like. Honey badgers are not native to North America. They live primarily in the savannas and semi-deserts of Africa and are known for their ferocity and ability to confront even extremely dangerous snakes. This also means that if they want to bring them to Florida, they would have to transport them directly from Africa and build a population large enough to survive in the wild. The first individuals would most likely have to undergo a period of quarantine and acclimatization to the hot, humid climate of the Everglades before being released. But history has shown time and again that whenever humans try to use an invasive predator to control an ecosystem, things rarely go according to plan. Instead of completely solving the problem of giant pythons, honey badgers could even create a new ecological chaos that lasts for decades. If humans truly want to establish a honey badger population in the Everglades, they certainly can't just release a few individual animals. They will need sufficient numbers from the outset for this species to reproduce, adapt, and maintain a population in the wild. Whether the Everglades will eventually be able to control the Burmese python is something we may only know the answer to in the next few years. If you find this ecological battle amazing, please leave a like.
A man was unexpectedly bitten by a rattlesnake near his home while he was walking. He recounts that he fell while trying to escape. This incident highlights the unpredictable nature of wild animals suddenly appearing in urban areas. It's truly concerning. Without evidence from the camera, you might not believe this story. During a barbecue party, a group of friends was enjoying themselves. They suddenly faced a terrifying situation with a highly venomous snake approaching. The incident was captured on camera a few years ago. While the group was savoring the meal, one member stood up and immediately noticed the snake just inches away from his feet. The astonishment and fear caused some people to flee. Fortunately, the snake slithered away, leaving everyone surprised and exclaiming that they never thought they would encounter a snake while relaxing outdoors.
Banded snakes are often very shy and are often found in Southeast Asia and some other regions such as the Indo-Pacific. Being bitten by this snake has a mortality rate of 1 to 10%, and the time of night is often considered ideal for them to attack. A particular case involves a woman who was awakened by noise from the adjacent house. Fortunately, this alerted her, and she woke up to discover a snake right under the floor, even inside the bathroom, causing her to become very frightened. It's funny. Somehow, a snake ended up in your pants. There's a lot more intriguing stuff ahead. Keep watching until the last minute of the video, and don't forget to leave comment number 1 to let me know you're sticking with us until the end of this content. A daring rescue unfolds when residents discover an uninvited guest, a snake trapped while attempting to sneak into a house without safety features. Indeed, a rescue worker showcased courage by overcoming the challenge, climbing onto the roof to capture the snake, and skillfully hiding in the small gaps between the tiles. Even while relaxing, this woman unexpectedly faced harassment from a snake. Suddenly, the snake appeared, leaving her completely startled. She grabbed anything around her to drive it away, avoiding potentially dangerous situations that could harm her. In an auto repair shop, a playful snake is seeking shelter from the rain. Notably, a mechanic captured footage as the snake slithered across the wet concrete surface, daringly venturing from the other side of the road into the shop. The shop owner revealed that an initial shock went through the workers, but they quickly regained composure and sought assistance. Although the snake's presence raised concerns among people in the workshop, there were no signs of malicious intent, and they organized help without encountering any issues. Japan is facing a significant challenge: the surging population of wild foxes. With estimates reaching over 100,000 foxes, this number has tripled compared to 40 years ago, and they are now present across forests, rural areas, and even within residential communities. The presence of wild foxes has created significant impacts, especially in agriculture, where they cause considerable damage to crops and affect the food sources of other animal species. Additionally, there are risks for humans and pets as they encroach into residential areas, particularly during the breeding season. The increase in the number of wild foxes in certain areas often stems from the loss of natural habitats. Deforestation for urban expansion and agricultural needs reduces the natural living space for foxes. Forcing them to seek new environments. Environmental changes, depletion of natural food sources, and escalating interactions between humans and wild foxes are additional factors contributing to their invasion into residential and urban areas. Leave a number 1 in the comments if you find these foxes adorable. The negative impact of the wild fox invasion on agriculture and ecosystems is quite substantial. In the agricultural sector, they cause severe consequences, especially in attacking livestock and poultry. Wild foxes not only inflict economic damage but also threaten the health of the livestock. For instance, a single wild fox can kill 10 to 20 chickens each night. Furthermore, their influence extends to crop seasons, as they consume fruits and vegetables, reducing crop productivity. In fact, wild foxes can consume up to 50% of the corn yield in a field, posing significant challenges to sustaining and developing agriculture. The invasion of wild foxes not only damages the habitat but also brings the risk of disease transmission to humans and domestic animals. Wild foxes can be a source of infectious diseases such as rabies, mange, and parvovirus, increasing health risks for both humans and domestic animals. Managing wild foxes becomes crucial to ensure safety and sustainability in the community. To deal with the invasion of wild foxes, some have chosen to use firearms to control the population and reduce negative impacts on the environment and agriculture. However, this process requires strict adherence to local and national hunting regulations and guidelines. The use of firearms for wildlife control sometimes leads to ethical and legal controversies, and many animal welfare organizations raise issues related to humane treatment and the protection of ecosystem sustainability. Leave a number 1 in the comments if you like this approach. Let's explore more about the wild fox, a common invasive species originating from North America, Europe, and North Africa. This fox species has been introduced to various regions worldwide, including Japan. With its vibrant red fur and long tail, the red fox stands out with a flexible and elegant appearance. High adaptability and excellent hunting skills are characteristics that enable the red fox to thrive in various habitats, from pristine forests to urban areas. You may not know that for thousands of years, the red fox has been considered a protective spirit guarding humans from misfortune. In the superstitions of some Japanese people, the fox is seen as a bringer of good luck in areas such as love, wealth, and education. In art, foxes are often depicted with red or white fur and are commonly portrayed with 9 tails. Despite positive beliefs surrounding foxes, the public is still advised to keep a safe distance from them as they are wild animals. So what about domesticating wild foxes? Does that make sense, right? Domesticating wild foxes requires a focus on studying natural behavior and creating a suitable conservation environment. This involves providing ample space, diverse food, and proper healthcare and care. Creating opportunities for safe interaction between humans and wild foxes, coupled with community education and regular monitoring, will ensure the effectiveness and safety of the domestication process, addressing the invasion issue sustainably. However, farmers also face numerous challenges in the process of domesticating wild foxes. To undertake this task,